Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Ryan Garcia was stopped by Tank Davis in round 7 of their highly anticipated lightweight affair. In the preview, we spoke about certain technical elements that could really help decide the fight, and they did. We explained that we thought that Tank would be sort of cagey early on, get on the back foot, and Ryan would start the better and he would be more active. And we saw in round 1 that Ryan was doing a really good job with the jab. He was able to stop Tank from cancelling his jab from that southpaw position by varying the jab to hitting his hand or going above the jab or going inside the guard of the jab. He was fast with it. He was accurate. And one of the really good things that Ryan had is that when Tank was just crouching slightly, Ryan would read that. He'd read that tell and he'd take a step back. So when Tank was shooting that powerful backhand, Ryan had him on lock early on. He was reading it and he was stepping back and Tank was falling short. And that gave Ryan a lot of confidence. And in the second round, he started to let go of the right hand. And when he landed it, he thought to himself, I can actually put it on Tank Davis here. So he started to get after him and he got too greedy. I'm watching this fight and I'm saying, Ryan, what are you doing? You're running red lights. You're taking risks. Tank wants to lure you onto shots. If you'd watched that Chris Andre boxing preview, he would have seen that that is what Tank was looking for. And how did he get caught? Again, something we mentioned in the preview. A lot of people confuse footwork with foot speed. They'll look at guys that look flashy and they'll fight out of a shell and they'll shoot a fast jab, for instance, and they'll say, oh, he's got great footwork. And he might not. He's just very athletic. Footwork isn't just about foot speed. Footwork is also not just about foot positioning, because a lot of people will say, orthodox southpaw, get your lead foot on the outside of the opponent's lead foot. Yes, that's true for the vast majority of the time. There are moments where you should break those rules. We'll get into that in other videos for other technical breakdowns. But generally speaking, it's a rule that is correct. However, the direction in which your toes point is also important. And that's something no one ever speaks about. And we spoke about in the preview how the Frank Martin Rivera fight could potentially be decided on that, and how this could potentially be decided on that particular detail as well. Because as Ryan seeks to throw that left hook, because his feet point towards 2:30 p.m. rather than 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. pointing at the opponent, the reason his feet are turned in that manner is because when he's going to try and generate a bit of spacing to shoot off that left hook, he'll lean back, he'll throw the left hook, and because he's then pivoting from 2:30 to 3, it creates more momentum, more leverage, more spacing to create the turn for the hook, which means he creates more power. And he trades that with the fact that his foot positioning isn't always going to be perfect. The problem with that, as we showed in the preview with a couple of examples against Javier Fortuna, when you miss that left hook, that lead shoulder, when you throw it in the method that he throws it, goes beyond the point of the opponent. Now, if you're Danny Garcia and you do that and you overlean, he throws it from a more squared position. We're not talking about his footwork, but we're talking about the position he ends up in after delivering that hook. He gets his head off the line, Danny. So it gives you less opportunities to counter, whereas Ryan keeps his head tall. And we spoke about this as he whips it around and his left hand comes down, you know that he's in line with the backhand. And we explained if he's in that position, he's going to be in serious trouble. And that's how he got dropped the first time. And from that point forth, from going from very, very confident or building his confidence early in the fight and being overly offensive, he becomes overly cautious. He becomes gun shy. I thought he may have edged the third round. He started well. Tank came back. That was a close round. Apart from that, though, the only rounds he won were the first and the sixth. So you could make an argument that he won 2 or 3 rounds out of the 6 that played out because Tank was so inactive. But Tank looked like he was in control. He looked as though after that first round and a half, he looked as though he was the one that was making Ryan nervous. He was the one picking his moments. He was the one at points talking to Ryan in there. He felt as though, listen, you don't get points for that. I'm not going to give him rounds because he's trash talking. But sometimes it can give you an insight into the mentality of the opponent. We spoke about him targeting the body as well in the preview and how he'll really dig that backhand into the body. You saw him start to do that to Ryan as he started to lean back. He started to find a home for that. So now Ryan's not looking as defensively astute as he was in the first round and a half. He's not looking as offensively gung-ho. So now he's starting to look uncertain. And that's a really good, it was a really, really good performance from Tank Davis. Very efficient in that regard. But then what you started to see in that 7th round is Ryan getting a little bit more confidence again, just slightly, not as early, not as much as in the first round and a half. And he starts to let his hands go. But what did we speak about again in the preview? If you are going to be entering against Tank Davis, you need to be using a lot of misdirection and a lot of feints. He reacts to feints. He did use that 2-1 combination on one occasion and he landed it. But generally speaking, his entries were just him walking in as quickly as he could and then letting go of his fast hands in the hope of trying to catch Tank Davis. You have to be smarter. And what ended up happening is in the middle of it, after he had a little bit of success, he started to let his hands go up close, little close hooks, and he ends up getting caught with a little short left hand to the body. It was a jab, essentially. Now, I'm going to say something very controversial from this point moving forward. In terms of Tank, fantastic performance. But in terms of Ryan Garcia, I think he needs to consider his future here. And I'll tell you why I say this. Because that shot didn't land underneath the ribs. This wasn't a liver shot where he was writhing on the floor. This wasn't Golovkin-Macklin, where he just couldn't get up. There's a real delayed reaction, which you can sometimes see with a body shot. He takes a knee, he looks at Tank, he looks at the ref, he can clearly see the count, he's lucid, and he gets up at 10.5. It's not as though he was unable to get up. I don't buy that. I was winded and I couldn't get up. You got up the moment you knew the ref would stop it. You showed just enough pride where you didn't want to stay down for too long, but not enough pride to drag you to your feet. This is a guy who's got a lot going on for him outside of the ring. He's a very good-looking kid. He's got a lot of income from social media. You remember Marvin Hagler's quote about running in silk pajamas in the mornings, getting up and doing that at 5 a.m. and pushing yourself and grinding? It's hard when you're rich, like Rocky Balboa before he fought Clubber Lang. Ryan Garcia hasn't had to go through the grind that those fighters went through. Those fighters, as though Rocky's real, right? Or that Marvin Hagler, for instance, went through in order to make the money. Instead, he's had it before he's really started on the journey in his career. So he's entering the sport of boxing with those silk pajamas already on. And so people, they're sitting there and they're saying, Ryan's a pretty boy, he's got no heart. And it's complete rubbish to say that a pretty boy can't have dog in him. That's a myth. It's so stupid. But Ryan, when they're questioning you and doubting you, you need to be getting up in those moments. You need to be doing your utmost to get up in those moments. And if you end up getting taken out, you get taken out. He didn't show that. Is his mind in the game? Because one thing you have to say, although we know Tank's a big puncher, he didn't get cleaned out by a big power punch. He got caught quite high up, like I said, between sort of the chest bone and the rib. But this wasn't a taxing fight on Ryan Garcia. He was up at the count of 1 or 2 for the first knockdown. And then the second one, he went down after a delayed reaction. He wasn't cleaned out. He wasn't getting beaten up. Imagine he was in a taxing fight. He's sitting there and he's talking about going to 140. What happens if you're in there against Josh Taylor, who's going to make this a war of attrition, or Redress Prograis, who's going to be banging away at that body with hard power shots and walking you down? Are you ready for that? Because if you weren't ready mentally for what Tank did to you today, how are you going to be ready to go through that sort of attrition? There was no attrition today for Ryan, and he chose not to get up. And I'm not one of those guys that calls fighters quitters. Did I not defend Daniel Dubois? Did I not defend Billy Joe Saunders? Because they had serious damage. When you are seriously damaged and you've got a situation where you're in agony and you cannot physically carry on, I'm not going to call you a quitter if you stay down. But listen, I didn't even call Anthony Joshua a quitter when he lost to Andy Ruiz, because he had taken a bludgeoning for a long period of time and he was already seemingly confused in the corner. Why is this happening to me? So he may have been concussed. He may not have really been understanding what was going on in the moment. Maybe he also quit, right? Maybe he was lucid enough to quit. I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. Whereas this one, there was none of that. Ryan wasn't getting battered. It was a very efficient performance from Tank, but he himself post-fight, what did he say? I thought he was going to get up. And I was looking at him saying to him, please get up, trying to play mind games. What is Tank Davis telling you there? I thought he was going to get up. I didn't hit him with a particularly big shot. And number 2, I was playing mind games. What does that mean? To get him to quit, to get him not to stand up, to show him that if you get up, I'm coming straight after you. Where's the dog in Ryan Garcia in that moment? And in addition to that, this is what I also mean, by the way, about body of work. Go and look at what Oscar De La Hoya had already achieved at the time, at the equivalent age to Ryan Garcia. Go and look at what he'd won and what he'd done and compare the two, right? Whereas now, if Ryan Garcia doesn't go on to achieve anything in boxing, this super fight and the winner would become the face of boxing. When I always say you need a body of work before you start making these outlandish claims, right? Well, how will this look in 20 years from now, this particular win? Will it be a better win than Pedraza? And that's not taking anything away from Tank in this particular fight, because like I said, very efficient, took his time, patient. He does need to be finding ways to up his activity, in my opinion. But when he's got that sort of punching power at lightweight, he's going to have a chance against anybody. And it was a fantastic performance. I can't take anything away from Tank. But we're analysing Ryan Garcia now and his future. Okay? So when you look at Ryan and what he's achieved so far, What makes his standing so great in boxing that this makes a legendary win for Tank Davis? Ryan was poor today, and I'm sorry he was, but he also doesn't have that body of work behind him. George Kambosos got a lot of stick. He got schooled by Devin Haney, right? He got schooled. Devin Haney's very active, taller, long jab, ties you up whenever you get close, massive at lightweight. In terms of minutes, how many minutes of a fight you're going to win? You're going to win a lot more against Tank. Many fighters have won numerous rounds against Tank. They've been up on the scorecards, but he turns it around. He's got that Deontay Wilder type of thing about him, whereby he's reading patterns and he wants to take you out even if he's losing rounds. Devin Haney's not like that. If George Kambosos had done what he did today, Ryan Garcia, what would the public opinion and narrative be? But because it's Ryan Garcia and he's been portrayed as a star, we've got to give him a pass? Why? Of course he can go to 140 and he can beat some good names out there. He's got that athleticism, he's got the talent, he needs to work on certain things. But this was not a war of attrition. If we're talking about him winning world titles and you look at some of the guys at 140, what makes you think he's ready for that? Do you really want this, Ryan? Now, in terms of Tank Davis, it does make his fights against some of the other lightweights really interesting, because Ryan did have a really good jab today and he was light on his feet, and that is something that Devin Haney looks to do as well. When I say light on his feet, I'm talking about when he's tracking out. Unlike Garcia, Devin Haney actually feints as well, so it makes it harder to enter against. He's much better at the distance control. But he's also looked vulnerable, Devin Haney, and we know that Tank has punch and power. So that makes it interesting. You know Devin's going to win the majority of the rounds, but Tank's going to have success sooner or later. If he's targeting that body and he gets close and he lines up that backhand, is Devin Haney going to survive? So it makes it very interesting, right? We know that Tank has still been some massive fights here at lightweight, and hopefully he continues to take risks rather than going to take on guys that the PBC will portray as these stars, but they're not really. We need him to start. We need to start. He's 30 years old. We need to see him start going in there against some of the bigger names in the division now. This is your moment. Go for it. But in terms of Ryan, I have question marks. Now, with regards as well to Ryan Garcia, I also want to say this. Let's say for argument's sake he was too winded. He broke a rib. Something happened. He couldn't continue. I know a lot of people are talking about the rehydration clause and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Because like I said, he wasn't caught with a body shot where he was winded and looked out on his feet and he couldn't carry on. He wasn't sharp. He was heavy in his legs like he says. No. He was reacting and reading those shots very well. In terms of his athleticism, it was there. I don't buy that excuse. It may have played a role later on in the fight. Quite frankly, what Tank was able to get away with in terms of the catch weight, the rehydration clauses, the one-way rematch clause, all this stuff to me was a joke, right? But it didn't play a role. It may have gone on to, but as far as I'm concerned, it didn't play a role. So now I have to ask myself a question about Ryan. If you are going to continue, how can you improve as a fighter? And I know people are going to laugh at this, but you know who he would benefit from working with? And I'm not saying that he would do this. He's not going to move to England, right? But you know, Ben Davison would really help him, because Ben would make him more concerned about the tactical elements of the sport, and Ben Davison will work on feints. He uses that word all the time. Feint, feint, feint. It's a big part of his boxing philosophy. And that's the one thing he lacks. He lacks quite a few things, but one of the things he lacks that is key is he doesn't feint enough. There's not enough there to use misdirection in order to set up particular shots. The other thing Ben does is work drills very well when he sees patterns with opponents. He would have seen certain patterns from Tank Davis and he would have said to Ryan, I don't want you throwing the hook in that way in this particular fight. You need to adjust. Now, I know Ben Davison's got a relationship with Devin Haney, so the chances of that link up ever happening is very, very unlikely, because let's face it, Devin and Ryan could meet one day at 140, right? But the fact of the matter is, Ryan needs work, man. Fantastic from Tank Davis. Ryan Garcia, I have question marks about him mentally. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, or right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.